Hello everyone, this is part 15 of What If Naruto Was Betrayed and Leaves Konoha, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Damn it. Sasuke openly cursed in frustration, as he dodged yet another powerful Kaiten jutsu from his elder kinsman. Looking over to Naruto, he saw his friend was also forced to do the same thing. Their fight against Madara had been one of attrition, and much to the chagrin of the elder Uchiha, he was slowly, but surely beginning to lose the fight. However, Madara would not be defeated so easily and had taken refuge inside his own Susanoo defense, when Naruto and Sasuke had been little by little wearing him down during their battle against him. Madara boasted to the two young shinobi that his Susanoo was absolute in power and undefeatable. And unfortunately that appeared to be the case, as Madara had Naruto and Sasuke on the defensive the moment he called upon the infamous Uchiha technique. This is why after surviving several close calls fighting against the elder Uchiha, while he was protected and attacking in his Susanoo form, Sasuke signaled Naruto and both of them shushed away from Madara to try and quickly formulate their next strategy against him, as Sasuke asked. "What do we do now, Dobe? Your plan of wearing him down was working, up until he called upon his Susanoo technique. And since he's using that technique he's now practically unbeatable. There you go again, team, bragging about some supposed unbeatable Uchiha technique. Instead of sitting there bitching about it, why don't you activate your own Susanoo to help us defeat the old bastard and his technique? I don't know, my Susanoo is powerful, but in comparison to Madara's it's nowhere near as formidable as his. Then I guess we need to add something to your Susanoo to increase the attack power." Sasuke looked on in awe, as Naruto created several shadow clones who immediately began to gather natural energy for him and then have them disperse to transfer their natural energy to him. Meanwhile Naruto looked over to Sasuke, who gasped when he saw his friend's eyes had reddish-orange pigment markings around them and horizontal, golden slitted pupils, showing his mastery over his sage form, as he said to the young Uchiha. "Sasuke, I need a little time for the clones to gather natural energy for me, before they disperse to transfer the energy to me to use as sage chakra. What are you going to do when you've got enough sage chakra?" "I'm going to create a sage art Odama Rasengan, but I need you to activate your own Susanoo technique and hold off Madara for a short time. Then when I'm ready, we'll hit him with a combination Susanoo and Rasengan attack. Maybe a combined attack using two of our most powerful techniques can put a dent into his Susanoo. Alright, I'll do my best to hold Madara off, but don't take too long." A nod from Naruto indicated he understood, and Sasuke sprinted forward activating his Mangekyo Sharingan, and a moment later he was surrounded by his own Susanoo technique. Madara in his Susanoo form began to charge forward, but had to stop and raise his technique's blade to block an arrow fired from Sasuke's technique. The younger Uchiha began firing off arrows in rapid succession to try and keep Madara at bay. Unfortunately, Madara was still moving forward, albeit slowly, as he blocked or dodged the arrows Sasuke was shooting at him. Naruto watched what was happening with great concern and created a few more shadow clones to increase the speed of the natural energy being gathered. After a couple of minutes, Naruto felt his clones had gathered enough energy and dispersing all of them save one, and the two of them began the process of creating the sage art Odama Rasengan. Once he and the clone had formed the massive Rasengan to sufficient size and power, he shouted out, "Let's do this, Sasuke." Naruto's cry momentarily distracted Madara, and Sasuke fired off 3 arrows from his Susanoo Mangekyo Sharingan defense in quick sequence. Madara's, due to him being briefly distracted, was barely able to block the first arrow from Sasuke, but not the second one as it dislodged the Susanoo sword. And before the blade could be recovered, the third arrow impacted the chest of Madara's Susanoo, followed a scant second later by Naruto's sage art Odama Rasengan. As Naruto unleashed his giant Rasengan, he prayed that this combined attack with Sasuke would be enough takedown or at least injure Madara. Because if it didn't, Naruto knew that calling upon two of the most powerful attacks he and Sasuke had in their arsenals would deplete their chakra levels significantly. As the joint attack struck, the resulting explosion sent a small mushroom cloud of debris into the air and could be seen, heard, and felt for miles around them. What was once a land filled with nothing but snow, the scenery had suffered a dramatic change. One could take a seat and make a nice painting out of the exuberant scenarios of spring country. However, as two individuals faced each other in a clearing located between two mountains, neither minding 2 cents about this place. If anything, considering the battle that was soon to start, this piece of land will certainly suffer a lot of damage. Kakashi had both his hands in his pockets, as he eyed his former genin teammate and his best friend in front of him. Uchiha Obito was essentially the same way as 4 years ago when Konoha managed to beat the Akatsuki. He was still wore the famous black robe with red clouds, with the exception of his orange swirling mask, which happened to be broken 4 years ago when Naruto slammed a wind-raising gun into it, smashing it to pieces. Kakashi could see Obito's Sharingan and Rinnegan as well. Everything appeared to be the same as before, so Kakashi at least concluded that his opponent's skills were the same as back then, which actually was a lot. Why did you come back, Obito? The wind picked up after Kakashi's question and Obito only released a snort at the question. Revenge Kakashi, a simple word, but a word that has kept me going, while everything and everyone I ever cared about was taken away from me. Kakashi just stared at Obito, carefully matching his eyes. Of course, Kakashi knew what Obito meant. Actually, he knew whom Obito was referring. Ever since they were genin, Obito was passionate about the third teammate Rin and remained so, even after his presumed death at the hands of a Wagakur. Kakashi also remembered the episode that transformed his best friend to what he was now. His professionalism was not enough to keep Kakashi from suffering about what happened back then when a Junin army from Kirigakure cornered him and Rin a long time ago. Despite facing his old teammate once more and despite knowing that what happened back then wasn't his fault, Kakashi couldn't help but take responsibility for it. What happened with Rin back then? Kakashi began to speak, but Obito rudely stopped him. I don't care what you have to say, Kakashi. You and I have already had this conversation once before. I know damn well what happened on that day, I was there, remember. Above all, when I died, I met with her once more and she told me the truth. This is why I hate you for helping to destroy Madara's infinite Tsukuyomi plan for the world. Kakashi's only visible eye widened, as he looked at his long-lost friend in the eye upon hearing this, before Obito cried out in a pain-filled and sorrowful fury. It's not fair. Rin didn't deserve to be captured by Kirigakure and have the Sanbi sealed away inside of her. She didn't deserve that her body wouldn't be able to restrain the beast for long and that Kiri intended for the beast to be inside Konoha and destroy just like it happened to the Kyuubi. And she didn't deserve to have to sacrifice her life on that fateful day, when she threw herself in front of your attack in order to save the village. Kakashi felt Obito's voice grow in volume at each sentence, while the deceased Uchiha remembered how lost in rage he was when he saw the event before his eyes. Tell me something, Kakashi. The scarecrow Junin looked up from the ground, waiting for Obito's words. Do you remember what I asked of you when I gave you my Sharingan eye? Of course, Kakashi remembered. He'd recited it in front of the hero stone almost every day. I told you to watch out for her, to protect her from harm, but you didn't. I have received a blessing from Madara-sama for another chance to exert my revenge. So prepare yourself, my old friend. Kakashi flinched when Obito used his space-time ninjutsu, vanishing from his usual position. Kakashi stood there waiting for the attack that came when Obito materialized a few meters behind him, throwing windmill shuriken. Kakashi wasted no time and with speeds that surprised Obito, Kakashi finished a short series of hand seals, before slamming both hands on the ground. Kakashi learned after seeing how Itachi performed hidden from view hand seals. It was quite ironic how an Uchiha would practice a certain move to keep the Sharingan from fully anticipating it. Doten Doryuheiki, Earth Release. Mud Wall Technique. The giant shuriken onslaught hit the wall of earth and Kakashi wasted no time, before closing the distance to Obito and engage in taijutsu. Obito always favored mid to long range techniques and tended to use his space-time ninjutsu far too often. As soon as Kakashi passed through Obito, he attacked once more. He learned about Obito's fighting style and thus was able to attack at the same time when Obito materialized once more to hit him. Kakashi thus hit Obito's stomach, sending him skidding a couple of meters. The scarecrow Junin pressed forward using the same strategy, when his gut told him to abort just as Obito lifted his right arm. Mokuton Sashiki no Jutsu, would release, cutting technique. Kakashi's eyes widened when wooden sticks suddenly materialized from Obito's arm and pierced his chest. He wasn't even aware that Obito was able to use Mokuton. A small drop of blood left his mouth as Obito's mouth twisted to a maniacal glee as he savored the death of the one responsible for Rin's death. So sure of Kakashi's death was Obito that he ignored the slight moving of earth behind the mud barrier created by Kakashi earlier. The Kakashi that Obito stabbed was suddenly enveloped by thousands of bolts, frying Obito. Raten Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, lighting release, shadow clone technique. The real Junin stood by, watching Obito fighting the pain that enveloped him. No doubt, Obito was unaware that anyone could attack him like this. Kakashi needed to form a direct link to Obito to use this technique, so he needed to receive his old friend's attack head-on. Since Obito's body was mixed with one of the Zetsu, his body was extremely weak against lightning. When the lightning current stopped, Obito got up from the ground, trembling. He looked at Kakashi with narrowed eyes. Once more, he extended his arm and much to Kakashi's surprise and memory, he was suddenly pulled towards his former teammate. It was the same technique Nagato used when he attacked Konoha 4 years ago. He saw Obito using his space-time ninjutsu and throw a barrage of kunai at Kakashi. Kakashi quickly lifted his headband and with his Mangenkyu Sharingan, sent the kunai to another dimension. He then summoned a Kage Bunshin, before going through hand seals. Raten Raiden no Jutsu, lightning release, current technique. Kakashi and the clone formed a chain of lightning as he flew towards Obito, who had to abandon his attack and simply allow Kakashi to pass through him. After dismissing the Bunshin, Kakashi faced Obito for a while, still with his Mangenkyu Sharingan activated. After winning against Akatsuki, 4 years ago, Kakashi decided to extend his time with the Mangenkyu activated. He looked at Obito with his Sharingan and could see how different Obito was now. Kakashi could see the rips in dimension because his Mangenkyu is the same as Obito's. Therefore, he was able to anticipate when Obito would use his space-time ninjutsu. You've improved since last time, Kakashi. But no matter, even if you found a way to kill me, you forgot that I'm already dead. Kakashi narrowed his eyebrows at Obito's statement, before he scoffed and stated. Your attempts of prolonging the fight is useless, Obito. I'm well aware of how the Edo Tensei works. Kakashi focused the Reikiri on his right hand and charged at Obito with great speed. Obito went through hand seals, before using his space-time ninjutsu in conjunction with fire manipulation. He sent a massive vortex of fire in Kakashi's direction, but the Scarecrow Junin simply dodged the incoming flames and continued on his path. He saw the moment Obito initiated the space-time ninjutsu initiating and increased the speed. When he delivered the blow, he was able to slice Obito's arm off, before seeing it regrown because of the Edo Tensei. Kakashi cursed his second delay. I see. Your Mangenkyu Sharingan follows my real movements. After all, you and I share the same eye, but my position stands, Kakashi. You cannot kill me. Can I give it a shot? A strange feminine voice reached their ears, before Yugito appeared in her second transformation, unleashing a concentrated Bayudama on Obito. Kakashi jumped away immediately, as the attack hit Obito dead on and it carved a gigantic hole in the once beautiful valley. Yugito looked at Kakashi and nodded at him, before going towards the other fights. Kakashi nodded at the help and focused on his Sharingan to see if Obito was damaged in any way. Kakashi wanted to accompany the attack, if he was to seal Obito's body afterward. The image of Obito's body appeared from the smoke. His entire outfit was damaged, but his body appeared to be clean. That was a dirty trick, Kakashi. I thought you wished to fight me alone. Kakashi snorted at that. You wish to lecture me about fairness, Obito. I'm not even going to waste my time with an answer. Kakashi threw a couple shuriken, before going through hand seals. Shuriken Kage Bunshin, Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique. Obito narrowed his eyes at the usage of the Sandaime Hokage's special technique, while his Sharingan worked hard to pinpoint the designated target. Normally, he would simply use his space-time technique and simply watch the projectile pass through him, but Kakashi wouldn't waste chakra in doing such a chakra-taxing technique without taking everything into consideration. He realized that his old comrade did take his ability into consideration and immediately switched tactics, using the Rinnegan's ability to repulse objects. The force of gravity was enough to repulse all the projectiles, before Obito faced Kakashi once more. It's futile, Kakashi. There isn't a single thing you can do that I don't have a counter for it. Obito stopped talking, as he suddenly felt Orochimaru's control of him through use of the Edo Tensei disappear, meaning the Snake Sannin had meant his end, and a small smile spread across his face. The timing of Orochimaru's death couldn't have been better, as Obito was about to unleash the berserker state of the Rinnegan, which allowed him to always defeat a much stronger opponent. And as powerful as Kakashi was, Obito doubted that even he could survive such an attack, and he was grateful that he was no longer being compelled to use it. Truthfully, he had never wanted to return to the world of the living, let alone fight Kakashi once again. All Obito wanted was to return to the afterlife, and if Kami would allow him to, be reunited with Rin once again. Turning back to Kakashi, he suddenly found that his movement was restricted. He looked down and narrowed his eyes in appreciation Kakashi's little trick. Obito was annoyed after what he saw, as he couldn't believe that Kakashi would use this on him. As he felt his entire chakra capacity drain from his very body, the veins in his eyes threatened to bulge, as he looked at Kakashi, who looked down in pity. One of the shuriken used by Kakashi for the shuriken cage bunshin was laced with a specific fuinjutsu formula. The projectile would land closely to the enemy and ensnare the enemy, not only binding him in place, but also sucking all his chakra. The reason Obito was annoyed was because of the person that actually invented this technique in the first place. Even if the Yondaime Hokage was famous for his fuinjutsu, Rin was the only one of his students to take an active interest in learning fuinjutsu. Obito even remembered the time when she came up with the idea to Minato-sensei, and how thrilled she was when the Yondaime Hokage and Kushina praised the girl for it. Obito even remembered how he wanted to be the one to embrace Rin and congratulate her for it. Obito didn't even realize the tears that fell from his eyes, but he heard the unmistakable sound of Kakashi's Chidori technique, as he said with sadness. "You always wondered why I did everything, Kakashi." Kakashi's arm was entirely filled with lightning chakra, as he waited for Obito's final words. "This entire world is a fake. Everything that happened to me, to us, everything happened because of the system created by the shinobi. Just like Rin didn't deserve to die, you didn't deserve to stand in front of a tombstone wishing things could go different. Even what you did right now is fake in my mind, using Rin's technique against me. Through Madara's plan, everything would have been different. Rin wouldn't be dead and we would be like how we should have been all along, but that isn't the case, so go ahead and finish it." Kakashi didn't say anything and charged at Obito, before plunging the Chidori right in Obito's chest, and he said with sorrow, "Goodbye my old friend, I hope you and Rin can find the peace you both deserve in the afterlife." "Goodbye Kakashi, and thank you," Obito gratefully replied, before he closed his eyes again forever. "I wish I could say anything to ease your mind and heart, Obito. Sadly though, there is nothing I can think of. Even after everything you did, you weren't trying to win this fight, were you? You never once called upon your Rinnegan powers to battle me, and I know now all you wanted is to be with Rin again. I hope the two of you find one another again, and know that I will always consider you both precious loved ones that I have lost in my life." Kakashi openly proclaimed, the pain, grief, and regret he felt evident as spoke. Kakashi took a separate scroll from his pouch and sealed Obito inside. Inside the scroll was the soul detachment seal used to bind a soul inside. A lone tear rolled down Kakashi's face, while he thought of his former friend and teammate and wished that things could have gone differently, as he put the scroll away. However, before Kakashi could mourn once again the loss of his comrade, a massive explosion echoed through the landscape, and the ground he stood on shook for a moment. Looking towards the direction the explosion had come from, Kakashi saw a mushroom-shaped plume of smoke and debris rising towards the heavens on the distant horizon. The copy nin knew that was where his former students were battling Madara, and he immediately took off towards them, as he thought to himself, "Hang on guys, I'll be there soon. I once made a promise to always protect the both of you and Sakura when you were my students. And even though you're no longer are my pupils and have grown up, I will still protect all of you with my life if I have to." As Naruto and Sasuke rose from the ground coughing to expel some of the dust from the combined attack on Madara, they looked over to where the elder Uchiha had been standing. As the dust and debris finally began to settle so they could get a good look, their eyes grew wide in shock. For there stood Madara, still surrounded by his Mangekyo Sharingan created Susanoo defense. However, though Madara's Susanoo still stood, that wasn't to say that Naruto and Sasuke's joint attack hadn't damaged the supposedly invincible technique, as one could see many cracks and fissures in the black-colored skeletal-type frame that encompassed its body. "Damn it, how can that damn thing still be standing?" Naruto cursingly questioned. I told you, Dobe, that Madara's Susanoo was freakishly powerful. Sasuke replied. Yeah, well, it still looks like we damaged it, team. Maybe if you hit him again with one of your Susanoo arrows, it might finally bring that behemoth down. I wish I could, but my Susanoo was shattered protecting the two of us from the explosion of our attacks. And I don't have enough chakra right now to use that technique again. What about you? Can you hit him with another Sage Art Odama Rasengan? I could try, but it would take me even longer to gather up enough natural energy for a powerful enough attack, and I doubt your kinsman will give us the time for me to do that. Suddenly, Madara's voice rang out on the battlefield. You're right, Namika's legacy, your attack was indeed powerful, and I won't let you utilize the time you need to hit me with another. I will compliment the two of you, as no one has ever damaged my Susanoo to the extent you two did since the days I fought Hashirama Senju. However, though it is damaged, as you can see, it still stands. So if that's the best the two of you can do, then both of you should just give up and accept your defeat by my hands with honor. I swear upon the Uchiha name that I will make your deaths as quick and painless as I possibly can. Sorry, Uchiha team, but that's far from the best we can do. Naruto shouted in defiance of Madara, before he turned to Sasuke and said. I think it's time to play our Bankai trump cards now. I agree. A moment later, both young shinobi stood proud and tall next to each other and glared momentarily at Madara, before they each ran a hand along the length of their blade and shouted in unison. Bankai. In a brilliant flash of smoke and light, the appearance of both Naruto and Sasuke changed dramatically in front of Madara's eyes. Naruto's Anbu attire was replaced with a long-sleeved, ankle-length black coat with red lining, which is closed at his chest and left to flare out into ragged ends, much like the spiritual form of the Zangetsu blade itself. The coat is actually a part of Naruto's Bankai, and the damage it can take is directly proportionate to the remaining strength and level of his Ryutsu. Meanwhile, the Zanpakuto also transformed when Bankai is activated and went from its Shikai form of a blade nearly as tall as Naruto, which is colored black with a silver edge. The sword is invariably broad at the hilt, but tapers progressively and radically to a needle-like, triangular tip. However, Zangetsu's new appearance when Bankai is called upon is radically different, as the blade has shrunk down to a long sword with a completely black-colored blade. It also possesses a cross-guard that has 4 prongs bent out to form the shape of the manji. The blade itself can endure even the strongest of attacks, making it quite effective in blocking and deflecting incoming attacks. The new blade is also very strong and sharp and can cut through nearly any substance. And instead of the cloth his Shikai form had, a short length of chain with a broken link at the end now dangles from the base of the hilt. Sasuke's transformation was no less spectacular, as Zabimaru into a massive version of its Shikai form, resembling a skeleton of a snake. However, Zabimaru gained many more and much larger segments, resembling a mix between a snake's vertebral column and the pick-like protrusions of his Shikai segments. It also gained a snake-like head about the size of a large carriage. Meanwhile, Sasuke's appearance also changed with the release of his Bankai, as he gained a fur cowl around his neck. The cowl appeared to be the fur of an ape, and an ape's skull could be seen over Sasuke's left shoulder, while the rest of the fur extended to cover his right arm. Raw Zabimaru, Haikotsu Taiho. Baboon Bone Cannon. Sasuke then whipped Zabimaru towards Madara, and the massive jaws of its snake-like head opened and a ball of Ryoryoku momentarily appeared in its mouth, before it erupted into a dense blast of the concentrated spiritual energy heading directly towards the elder Uchiha. Madara quickly raised his Susanoo sword to block the attack when he suddenly heard Naruto yell. Getsuga Tensho. As before, Naruto's Zanpakuto sliced through the air in a downward arc, releasing a highly condensed crescent moon wave of spiritual energy from the tip of the blade, which magnifying the slash attack flew forward towards Madara. However, this time the potent blast of Ryoryoku was not electric blue in color, but was now black with a red outline, and Naruto seemed to control the path of the blast, as it raced towards Madara with even more explosively augmented power and speed than before. As both Sasuke's and Naruto's attacks struck the raised Susanoo blade, Madara gritted his teeth and grunted in strained effort to hold back his foe's assault. Suddenly, Madara's eyes grew wide in disbelief, and for the first time in a long time he actually felt fear. As he watched his Susanoo blade begin to crack and then a moment later break, and he screamed, as Naruto and Sasuke's Bankai attacks hit his Susanoo Mangekyo Sharingan defense, dead on. While the battle between Naruto's Crimson Army and Madara's Akatsuki army went on, 2 people observed it from a safe distance. However, These were no mere observers, of course. They had a purpose to their idle waiting and a vested interest in the battle's outcome. Which side do you suppose is going to win, Orochimaru-sama? Kabuto asked. At first I would have said Madara's army, since I know more about what Akatsuki followers can bring to the battle than what the Kyuubi Brat's army can. However, after watching how this battle has played out, it's a foregone conclusion that the Akatsuki followers will be defeated. Are you certain of this outcome, Lord Orochimaru? Unfortunately I am, as Naruto's army had the element of surprise and therefore an advantage. And the man Madara chose to lead his army has proven to be a fool. What do you mean? The famous Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu once said that, if the enemy holds the high ground, do not ascend and do battle with him. Now tell me, Kabuto, what do you see? As Kabuto gazed at the battle, he understood what his master was talking about, as he watched the men of the Akatsuki army attempt to attack Naruto's army in the valley they had been led into. However, Naruto's men held the high ground of the basin, and as the Akatsuki men attempted to ascend and battle them, they were being cut down. Naruto's battlefield general had also cleverly cut off the Akatsuki army means of retreat, trapping them within the valley. Kabuto looked over to Orochimaru and said, I understand now, my lord. It matters not, those fools are inconsequential and nothing but fodder. The real battles involve the true men of power like Madara and myself. Truthfully, it's meaningless to me who wins this Akatsuki war, as in the end it will not matter, for I will be the one to truly claim victory. You still have to face the side that remains standing. Both will be weakened, of that there can be no doubt, but we can't assume the remaining army won't still be able to fight back to some degree. Kabuto warned. I know, and personally I hope it's the Kyuubi Brat who wins. Fighting Itachi was difficult enough. I'd rather avoid fighting Madara if I have to, even if he's worn out. Both of the danger senses went off all of a sudden, and both jumped away from their posts just before a blast could hit them. There was a large explosion of energy, but the two criminal ninja were not affected by it. Someone tried to attack me from behind. Orochimaru silently realized. The Snake Sannin wondered who would be brave enough to face him during a war, and what he saw surprised him. As it was not a fleet of warriors or even a standard squad of 3 or 4. He simply saw 2 people, 1 man and 1 woman. They sent only 2 people after me, how insulting. Orochimaru thought with disgust, as he studied his would-be foes. The man could not have been younger than 35. He had a thin face with a dark short beard, and it looked like his hair was in a ponytail, but it was hard to tell since he wore a sachi hat over it. He wore a black kimono, but the most obvious feature was the pink floral kimono he wore over his shoulders. On both sides of his hips there was a sheathed sword. The woman looked like she was between the ages of 25 and 35. She had purple hair that reminded Orochimaru of Anko, only her ponytail was longer and more ladylike. She wore an orange top and black pants with shin guards, and the colors of her outfit reminded Orochimaru of Naruto's own apparel. Orochimaru and Kabuto, just the guys we were looking for. Shunsui stated. You plan on killing USSSSS. Yup. As ordered by Naruto-sama, you two are to die before you can get involved. Orochimaru laughed, before he spat with disdain. USSSS serve that boy. You can't be any threat to me then. What are you, starving bandits hoping to earn a little cash from him? Nope, just your average Shinigami. Shunsui answered. Shinigami. Orochimaru and Kabuto repeated, not expecting that. Were you expecting us to look like Onis or something, or maybe skeletons in robes? Yoruichi asked in amusement. Prove your Shinigami. Orochimaru insisted. Not interested. We're just here to kill you. Shunsui nonchalantly declared. Right away Yoruichi came at the 2 missing nin, aiming to strike down either one of them. Being the henchman that he is, Kabuto felt the need to intercept her. Chakra scalpels ready, he thrust out his arm as soon as she got close, but she grabbed his arm and used it as leverage to jump and give him a swing kick to his face. As he lost his balance, Yoruichi used Kabuto's body as a springboard to jump higher, and she got above Orochimaru. Oh no you don't. Striking shadow snakes. Orochimaru cried out, certain she was aiming for an attack for one of his blind spots. Holding up both arms, several snakes appeared and lunged at her in the air. Orochimaru smirked, certain she couldn't dodge fast enough. Shunpo. Yoruichi said, then glowed bright white and vanished, blinding Orochimaru and his snakes. Kabuto's eyes were hurt by the light too, but he could see well enough to tell that Shunsui was coming right at his master. She was just a distraction. Kabuto deduced. Before getting up, he ran towards Shunsui, who saw him and stopped, but he held out his two swords as if to dare the medic ninja to continue on. These two are trying to keep their attacks coordinated. Kabuto silently noted, seeing Yoruichi reappear and look ready to back up Shunsui. It will be better if we separate these two. And I think I know how. Then without further warning or claim, Kabuto started to run off, heading into one of the nearby forests. Damn, don't let him get away, Shunsui told Yoruichi. The former Shihu and heiress nodded and announced. I'm on it. Just you and me, Snake Man. Shunsui causally said to Orochimaru, who could see just fine now. No, it's just me. Orochimaru countered. I had a feeling you'd say something like that. Shunsui replied, as he placed his swords in a cross stance and chanted. Flower wind rage and flower god roar, heavenly wind rage and heavenly wind sneer. Katen Kyokutsu. A moment later, his two swords glowed and morphed. Now they were two black scimitars with silver edging on the cutting sides, and red tassels at the ends of the handles. The one in his right hand looked to be a bit longer than the one in his left. Impressive, Orochimaru complimented. You didn't think a Shinigami carried around just any sword now, did you? Shunsui asked. I still find your claim of being a Shinigami highly unlikely. But on the off chance you're being honest, I'd love to take you back to my lab to experiment on. Shunsui rolled his eyes and stated. Great, you're this world's version of my Yuri. Don't tell me you have a poisonous sword of your own too. Orochimaru grinned like a snake about to eat a mouse. Actually, yes I do. He opened his mouth and a snake head came out. Snake head coming out of a mouth. Sounds like something you'd see in an alien, not a person. Shunsui noted, referencing an old movie he had seen in the future in the realm he knew as World of the Living. Not sure what that makes this world, but it's definitely not the same realm. The snake then opened its own mouth and out came a sword handle. Orochimaru grabbed the handle and pulled the rest of the blade out, somehow not cutting the snake itself, and when he had it out the snake retreated back inside. This is my sword Kusanagi. One of the strongest swords in the world and is said to have killed a dragon in the past. And like you happen to guess, is quite poisonous to those it cuts. Shunsui sighed and said with annoyance. Great, here stands a mad scientist with a pale complexion, poison sword, and likes to brag. You're so much like my Yuri it's scary. What's there to be afraid of? After all, if you're a Shinigami you're immortal. Orochimaru taunted, still disbelieving the claim. I saw a Shinigami once when Sarutobi-sensei took my arms and this guy is no Shinigami. The snake Sanin thought with unwavering confidence, as he came at Shunsui aiming for his left side, hoping to wound rather than kill as to keep the guy alive for future purposes. I don't recall ever saying I was immortal. The pink-cloaked Soul Reaper said when he blocked the strike using a pincer move with both of his swords. SSSSSSO, you're saying you're a mortal Shinigami? Orochimaru asked, puzzled by the idea. To him it was too much of an oxymoron. Shunsui gave the snake Sanin a firm look and answered. I've lived 10 times longer than you have, maybe longer. I was one of the first Shinigami taught how to do the job by my honored sensei Genryosai Shigekuni Yamamoto, but I'm not immortal, no Shinigami is. Maybe your culture says otherwise, but that doesn't mean it's true. Then you're of no use to me, Orochimaru declared, as he got his sword free and made another strike and shouted. I desire immortality, not mere longevity. Shunsui blocked and slashed with his free sword. Orochimaru maneuvered his body to barely avoid the cut and asked. Why can't you mortals ever be satisfied with the lifespan you were given? If Kami-sama wanted you to live forever, don't you think he would have let you? I'm not even sure there is a Kami-sama. Orochimaru challenged, and then repeated the hidden shadow snake move to attack Shunsui. Well, just to warn you, there is indeed a hell, Shunsui said while cutting the snakes. Orochimaru made another effort to strike him, but Shunsui spun on his heel and easily avoided it. I'm guessing swordsmanship isn't your strong suit. Shunsui derided the snake Sanin in insult. I better change my tactics before this guy decides he wants to do more than fight lazily. Orochimaru thought, then sneered as if to look like he had just been toying with the former captain of Squad 8 and spat. Who needs a sword when I've got something even better? Before Shunsui could request him to be specific, Orochimaru did 4 quick hand signs, bit his thumb, and smeared the blood on his upper arm tattoo and commanded. Kuchio's no Jutsu. Summoning technique. The air instantly filled with light and smoke, and Shunsui could sense the sudden presence of a new living being. A large one at that, as a silhouette soon towered over the smoke, and in seconds Shunsui could see what it was. Before him was a titanic snake. A purple cobra to be specific, with horns behind the head, black rings going down its body, and strangely it had legs. Eastern dragon legs to be precise, and the tail ended exactly like the one on a rattlesnake. On top its head there stood Orochimaru. That's one odd serpent. Or is it a dragon? Shunsui casually commented, showing no fear whatsoever. The former Gote captain had faced down a lot of monsters in his lifetime, including but not limited to the strongest kind of hollows. A giant snake wasn't something that would get him shaking in his sandals. It's Manda too, the greatest snake to have ever lived. Orochimaru proudly declared. Shunsui shrugged and stated, if it's got legs it isn't a snake. Manda too then lunged right at the pink-cloaked man, ready to swallow him whole. Orochimaru noted he just stood there, not even trying to dodge, as he thought in confusion. Has he accepted the inevitable? Or does he actually think he can kill Manda too from inside? Let him see how wrong he is. Shunsui held out both swords and shouted. Aruni, purple. The giant snake reached its prey and engulfed him with ease. It lifted its head up to make swallowing easier, and then it felt a cut on its tongue. Not a particularly nasty cut in itself, but this one felt like a stab to the heart for the snake. Manda too froze up and started to lightly convulse, then collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Orochimaru jumped off to soften his own landing, then immediately checked his fallen summons. Manda too. What has happened? Try as he might, the snake Sannin detected no signs of life. It was as if the snake suddenly had a heart attack. How could this fool defeat my ultimate snake? Orochimaru openly asked in frustration. The mouth opened and Shunsui idly strolled out of it, looking more bothered by the saliva on him than anything else, as he complained. Great, who knows when I'll get the chance to have my clothes cleaned. You killed Manda too. Orochimaru all but shouted. Yeah, so what? How could you do such a thing with just 2 swords? Oh that. It's simple, I just played a little game called Aruni. Shunsui admitted, sounding like he had already explained it before and was tired of repeating himself. You beat my summons with a game. Orochimaru repeated, before adding. How is that even possible? I told you Shinigami don't use ordinary swords. This sword of mine, Katen Kyoketsu, has the ability to make children's games reality. Make children's games reality. Orochimaru repeated again, still drawing a blank. Yes, I started the game Aruni and picked the color purple. Whatever I cut feels a measure of damage proportional to the amount of that color on their body and clothes. Even a tiny nick can be as lethal as a guillotine if I pick the right color. And your snake was at least 95% purple. He had no chance of survival. This is absurd. There's no way what you say can be real. Orochimaru insisted. Shunsui held out his swords and offered. Then see for yourself, let's play Jankenbu. Jankenbu. Rock, paper, scissors. Shunsui nodded and replied. Yes. A good game for when my other opponent has a sword of his own. We attack each other once, clashing our swords together, while in that once moment we both pick either rock, paper, or scissors. The one who picks the losing choice feels the literal effect of the stronger choice on their body. For example, let's say you pick paper and I pick scissors. You would then feel like you were just cut in half yourself. Or if you pick scissors and I pick rock, you'd feel like you were being crushed by a great weight. So the loser feels the literal effects of their symbolic defeat. Orochimaru questioned. That's pretty much it. Oh. And no saying, I pick whichever choice beats his. That never works in any Jankenbu game. Never has, never will. Shunsui said. Adjusting his grip on his sword, Orochimaru tried to look firm. I guess I don't have a choice. Even if I tried to refuse, you could still attack me, and subconsciously now I'd still pick a choice. So I might as well do it when I'm prepared. With some distance between them, the two stood facing each other, waiting for the other to make the first move. Shunsui looked bored but patient, while Orochimaru looked bothered but calm. Both men knew that right now victory was only going to be obtained by pure chance rather than skill, therefore rushing into this fight was a poor move. It was the exact sort of situation Orochimaru hated to be in, one where he had no control of the outcome at all. It was hard to say exactly which one ran forward first or why, but both came at each other quickly and crossed their swords. The sound of the air being cut was heard along with metal hitting metal, and just as quickly as it started the clash had ended, with the two warriors standing facing away from each other. Did I win? Orochimaru openly asked, not hearing any sounds of agony from Shunsui but not feeling any pain himself. He tried to turn around to see for himself, but he couldn't. What? He thought to himself in a panic, as he tried to move again, but no part of his body listened to him and he shouted in bewilderment. I'm immobilized, but how? Typical, you chose rock. Shunsui bemoaned, as if disappointed, before adding. Guys like you usually do. You imagine experiencing the effects of losing to scissors and rocks as deadly, but losing to paper not so much, so you pick rock thinking if I happen to pick paper you can live with that. And why not? In the game paper covers rock. Not exactly a lethal experience. As Shunsui casually spoke, he strolled to the front of the Snake Sannin. He stopped in front of his opponent, slightly amused by Orochimaru's surprise and futile attempts to break free of his restraints, and announced. The one thing you forgot is I never said exactly how constraining the feeling of being covered in paper can feel. Right now you should feel as if a lot of paper is wrapped around you tightly. So tightly you can't even move. With that he held his long blade right against Orochimaru's throat. All that's left to say now is game over. One severed head later and Orochimaru was finally forced to embrace the one thing in the world he had tried to avoid other than the embrace of women. The embrace of death. Yoruichi was in hot pursuit of Kabuto, both having taken to running in the trees now. Then suddenly she stopped and went to the ground. Kabuto turned when he heard the change in her direction, only to see he could no longer see her in the foliage. Crap, where did she go? Orochimaru's protege thought with concern. Cautiously, Kabuto dropped to the ground and looked around as best he could by being alert for any possible surprise attack. After a dozen seconds he heard some rustling and on reflex threw a kunai into the bushes where the sound came from. From out of the bushes sprang a black cat, one that looked a bit startled by the attack. Just a cat. Kabuto reassured himself, and then resumed the search. As soon as he turned away he realized his folly and thought. Wait a minute, why would a cat? Before he could finish that thought, the white-haired shinobi felt an attack from behind, one too large to be a mere cat attacking him. The force and weight of the attack caused him to fall to the ground and prevented him from turning around. When on the ground he felt something pin him down, and in his peripheral vision he saw what it was. Not a black cat per se, but a black panther. With a bit of a roar the panther bit down on Kabuto's neck, enough to draw a good amount of blood but not break it. Content with the damage, the panther got up and also pulled off his glasses before stomping on them. I'm disappointed. I thought you'd be tougher than this, the panther said in a male voice before walking away back into the woods. When it was gone, Kabuto smirked. The panther quickly came upon a pile of discarded clothes, then morphed with a glow into a nude woman. Just to be safe I should go back there and make a more decisive move to put him down. Yoruichi pondered as she got dressed. Too late. She heard when she was fully clothed. Hearing something moving behind her but coming towards her, Yoruichi jumped surprisingly high into the air while spinning acrobatically. She landed on a tree branch facing the direction the voice came from. Your one mistake was leaving me alive, Kabuto proclaimed, standing with no wound on his neck but blood on his purple shirt. He looked a little shaky, likely from the loss of blood, but he looked ready for more as well. Also, he was looking right at Yoruichi like he could see her just fine without his glasses. I had thought that by destroying your glass you wouldn't have been able to find me before I got back to you. But I guess those glasses were just for show and you can see just fine, Yoruichi commented. Finally, someone figured it out, Kabuto complimented, before explaining. I've had several biological upgrades to my body to make it have the perfect regenerative abilities. I've had my heart ripped out of my rib cage and I've been injected with all sorts of venoms. Yet no one ever stops to ask themselves why my eyes would be the one part not improved. Even you can't survive everything, Yoruichi declared. Neither can you. So let's find out which one can find the other's limit first, and I know just the way to do it, Kabuto replied, looking rather pleased with himself, as he called out. Kuchio's no jutsu. Summoning technique. 4 quick hand signs and a blood sacrifice later, another snake was summoned. However, this one was vastly different than the others. It looked like Manda 2, complete with dragon legs, but this one resembled more of an asp than a cobra, and instead of a rattle on the tail it had a claw. But the biggest difference of all was the fact this serpent was the size of a tiger and the length of an average apartment. This is as good an opportunity as any to test out my newest creation. This little guy is called Manda Proto 3. Kabuto stated. With the success of the creation of Manda 2, Kabuto decided to see if he could create another clone of the deceased boss Snake Summons. Manda Proto 3 was a prototype for a future Manda 3, using different genetic traits and currently kept small for observation purposes. If successful, Kabuto intended to grow a bigger one and make that the official Manda 3. If not successful, he'd simply try a different genetic combination and hope that one worked better. Interesting snake, but I'll bet it can't catch me, Yoruichi said before running off into the forest through the trees. Seeing a moving target, Manda Proto 3 acted like most reptiles and pursued her. This I got to see, Kabuto said, determined to directly observe the strengths and weaknesses of his creation. So he followed them both, while thinking. Suddenly I wish I had added the traits of a spitting cobra to attack from a distance like now. Oh well, I'll keep that in mind for next time. Yoruichi hopped from tree branch to tree branch, avoiding a straight line. Behind her the snake followed with predatorial determination. The way it moved through the foliage looked just like a dragon flying, almost as if it wasn't grabbing the branches at all. All of a sudden Yoruichi stopped. Less than a second later she jumped backwards and landed on a lower branch on the tree that had been behind her. Manda Proto 3 had caught this too late and soared over her. Taking the opportunity, the purple-haired Shinigami jumped up and revealed a blade hidden in her left sleeve that she swung at the serpent's neck. The head and neck disconnected from the body and the two pieces fell to the ground. You didn't really think a snake was going to stop me, did you? Yoruichi taunted Kabuto, who stopped 2 trees away from her. Who said you killed him? Kabuto replied, pointing down. Yoruichi glanced downwards and saw what he meant. The headless body of the genetic prototype got back on its feet and the stump of the neck was quivering. The flesh appeared to bubble up and heal, then to Yoruichi's surprise 2 heads identical to the original grew in its place. While they grew, so did the body, becoming the size of a tank, with the legs getting thicker and looking more like dinosaur legs than dragon legs. It appears the Hydra gene worked. And the subject grows naturally on its own, likely to support the extra head. If that's the case, the official Manda 3 might not have to be gigantic from the start. Kabuto silently noted, pleased with his work, as he openly challenged. Kill my creation all you want, you'll only make it worse. I think not, Yoruichi calmly said before jumping to a higher branch on another tree. Manda Proto 3 was climbing the tree to get to her, moving a bit slower than before but surprisingly fast in her opinion. It jumped to her and she backed away, keeping the snake in her sight now and this time not running, something which confused Kabuto, as he thought to himself. Is she going to try something new? Hey, good luck woman. Even if you can kill Manda Proto 3, by the time you do you'll be tired while I'm still fresh. Right where I need it. Yoruichi said before crossing her arms in front of herself and tensing up her legs, before shouting. Shunko. Flash cry. Right away white light started to dance around her like lightning. Her clothes started to peel off and rip to shreds as if hit by a wind jutsu, leaving her in just a black under outfit. Yoruichi jumped forward, right at the mutant serpent while covered in white light. She hit it right at the junction of the 2 necks and kept going, cutting through it like a hot knife through butter until she cleaved it from neck to tail. And she didn't stop there, she continued with speed that was too much for Kabuto and hit him with enough force to knock him into a tree, her fist piercing him through his heart. But she didn't withdraw, instead she kept her fist there while her excess reishi burned him from the inside. I can't believe it, Kabuto thought in disbelief, feeling his body try to heal itself but unable to. Her reishi was burning the affected area and her fist was in the way, obstructing the regenerating tissue from reforming correctly. She used some sort of white version of the Hiraishin, and waited for me and the snake to be aligned so she could hit us together. Kabuto surmised, as he lay dying. He glanced to the fallen Manda Proto 3, which showed no signs of recovering. It turns out that the Hydra gene only counters decapitation, not bisection. His heart no longer beating, Kabuto knew he had a bigger priority than the life of his experiment. Namely his own life, as he thought. I still have chakra, so I can still defend myself. Readying himself, he performed a medical jutsu on himself and said. Heart substitution jutsu. Kabuto's chest glowed green and then the rest of his body did, before he declared. There. Now even with my heart destroyed my blood's still flowing so I won't die. Bet that won't last for long. Yoruichi commented, before taking the blade on her left arm and cutting into him. It only has to last long enough. Kabuto answered, as he grabbed her throat and started crushing it tightly. With only one free hand Yoruichi couldn't loosen his grip so well. If you want to stop me you're going to have to take your arm out of my chest. Kabuto smugly proclaimed. Despite the pain in her neck and decrease in oxygen, Yoruichi smiled. You're already dead. You just don't know it yet. She wheezed while trying to breathe. To quote you, I think not. Kabuto said, but then coughed up some blood and he cried out in pain. What? Kabuto's grip on her throat loosened despite his effort not to let go, and the muscles in his hands and arms ached. He could even feel his blood slow down in his body, and to his surprise his hair started to fall out and he fearfully asked. What did you do to me? I turned your healing against you. Yoruichi answered, rubbing her sore throat after withdrawing her right hand from Kabuto's chest, before adding. You say you can heal from everything. The problem is every organic body has a finite limit of how many times the cells in it can grow and divide to repair the body. Some may have a higher amount than others, but it's never truly limitless. Yeah, I know that. What's your point? Kabuto spat in angered frustration and concern, as he watched his skin wrinkle and thin. His mouth felt dry and his tongue felt like it was being mummified. My point is my fist wasn't just blocking your heart, it was damaging your body as it tried to repair itself. Damaging it a lot I might say. Your way of keeping your blood flowing without a heart only made it worse. My attack forced your body to use up all the regenerative energy it had stored up to be used in a lifetime in only a few moments. Right now, all your body can do is degenerate. No, this can't be. Kabuto stated in disbelief, looking and sounding 20 years older now and like he had leprosy. His heart substitution jutsu came to an end, resulting in his blood stopping in his body. No longer able to support himself, Kabuto collapsed like a chair with one leg, wheezing like he was the one being choked. Oh, but it is. Blink twice if you want it to end quickly. Yoruichi offered to him. Hating himself, Kabuto blinked twice. He didn't even bother to open his eyes after that, and when Yoruichi cut off his head, he'd never open them again. Hinata's medical platoon was positioned outside the valley where Naruto's Crimson Army clashed with Madara's army. Due to Daisuke's strategic moves and positioning of his forces, casualties had been relatively light. Hinata and Sakura were both grateful for this, as they were the only two people with any extensive medical training, as a rash of numerous injuries could potentially overwhelm them. Suddenly a loud booming explosion was heard off in the distance and one could see a small mushroom cloud of debris rising into the air on the horizon. Hinata, what was that? Sakura asked in confusion, as she ran up to the Hyuga girl. Hinata did not answer and her face remained impassive, but inwardly she felt her stomach tighten into a knot. For Hinata knew that where that explosion came from was where Naruto and Sasuke were battling Madara. Hinata was worried terribly and wanted nothing more than to rush to Naruto's side and make sure he was alright, but she knew she could not. Naruto had put his faith and trust in her to use her extraordinary medical skills to help as many of the Crimson Army survive this fight. Then there was also the fact that as much as she wanted to be by Naruto's side, Hinata could no longer just think about herself. She had her unborn child to protect and that superseded any other thoughts or actions she might wish to take. Such as rushing onto a dangerous battlefield just to be with the man she loves, as she thought to herself with concern. Oh Naru-kun, I want to help you so much in your fight, but I know I would be more of a detriment than and benefit to you on the battlefield. Please my love, return safe to me and our baby. Hinata was broken out of her thought when a shout of warning rang out from Kira Azura. The former Gote 13 officer had been assigned to help protect the medical platoon from the enemy forces and Hinata quickly asked. What is it, Kira? What has happened? Enemy forces of about 100 men are marching towards our position and will be here in a matter of minutes. A few minutes, there's no way we can evacuate and move the wounded and the medical unit in such a short amount of time. Sakura openly stated. We have no choice, we'll have to stop them. Hinata bravely declared. A few minutes later, Madara's forces arrived and gazed across the field to see three individuals standing directly in their path of the medical platoon and its wounded. Hinata, Sakura, and Kira stood defiantly waiting for the enemy to attack, but in an unexpected move they suddenly stopped. The Akatsuki followers then began to construct something, leaving the two Kunoikis and the former Shinigami perplexed at what they were doing, as Sakura asked. What are they doing? Why don't they attack? I don't know, Sakura-san, but keep your guard up nonetheless. Kira's right, we must be prepared for anything. Hinata affirmed in agreement. A short time later, it suddenly became clear as to what the enemy were building, as the ominous shape of a large cannon came into view. It was then all of the Akatsuki followers linked hands with the final member of the link placed his hand on the breech of the weapon. Suddenly all the men began to glow an ethereal blue and began channeling all of their chakra down the link and into the field gun. Kira was the first one to realize what they were doing and sprinted forward, while shouting a warning to Hinata and Sakura. Hinata-san, Sakura-san, get to the patients and attempt to take cover. However, the warning came too late, as a second later the massive cannon fired a concentrated beam of condensed chakra towards the medical unit and its patients. Kira quickly brought his own Ryutsu to bear and quickly went through a series of hand signs and shouted, "Ruby no Jomon, the gate of Dragon Tail." Instantly, over a dozen large pillars appeared which Kira arranged with some hand gestures, forming a gigantic shield between himself and the oncoming blast. A moment later, the chakra beam struck and it appeared the barrier the former Shinigami had erected was going to stop it. Unfortunately, after a few seconds, cracks began to become visible in the shield and Kira barely was able to leap aside, before the beam shattered the Kiddo defensive barrier and he could only look on in horror, as it raced towards Hinata, Sakura, and everyone else present within the medical platoon. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.